working with the Queensland under 19 team, and we had a very simple, very effective game model that everyone knew their role within the game model. And all our game plan, both of attack and defence, revolved around that. And if you're working with a team full time over the course of the season, like your pre-season, you should be able to coach and go, what's your philosophy, or what is your tactical idea? Again, it's just all come back to what your game model is. And there's a strength and conditioning coach. How am I going to help you achieve that game model?
G'day, Jared. How are you?
Good, mate. How you going?
I'm going really well today, thank you. How's the weather up there in Sydney?
It's not been too bad. Yesterday was pretty chilly, but it's been all right today. Went for a bit of a walk before. It was brisk, but not like one bear. Quite a bit better than Canberra.
Yeah, today's actually been pretty good. You know, like for most people, it'd be like, Jesus, it's freezing. But I think it's like 10 degrees nearly now, and the sun's out. I went for a lake walk just before, so it's pretty good. So can't complain for us. This is quite nice, and it gives you hope that the warmer weather is just around the corner.
Yeah, it's coming soon.
But then we complain about the heat anyway, so you can't win. So how's the year been going so far, and what have you been up to?
It's been up and down. I was working with the South Sydney Rabbitohs up until April, and finished up there, and then just lately I've been working with got back from camp last week with the Queensland under 19 team, which was awesome. It was a really good camp. It's obviously still a little bit different when you go into those kind of camp style situations. Like, you don't have full control over what the guys are doing. It's more about gathering intel and gathering data, and more of that management style of coaching and keeping everyone on track there. So, which was a good sea change. We didn't get the result we wanted, but I think QRL's got some really good people in place there. So I think we're kicking some goals.
I think the NRL do that quite well with the state of origin, and you get to identify some really good talent coming from both states, and you have the many different age groups as well. So there's many opportunities for these kids to stand out and potentially continue along their path towards playing the NRL, and then, you know, once they're in there, potentially play state of origin as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably one. There's good and bad still with the amount of coverage some of the younger guys get now, and girls. I think it's good so people can kind of see, especially like the hardcore fans, you want to see the next generation for their clubs and that kind of thing. But also, like, there's the pressure and maybe some like ego things that come with that as well. But no, overall, I think it's really good that people can see what's coming up.
How long did you have the camp for those kids?
We were in camp for 7 days. So we went Friday to played Thursday, so yeah, 7 days.
What was it like in the camp? Did you do any gym stuff as well? Was it mainly just field stuff and a little bit of testing? Or
yeah, it was really good. We I suppose Matt Ballon was the head coach, and he's currently an assistant coach at the Broncos. So basically, probably when he put 2 out from the camp, him and I sat down on a couple of calls and really made a point of planning out our week. So we play on Thursday, so we worked backwards from there. Probably a little bit more intensity in our training than what we used to in a week, but obviously we had to like do some install and stuff like that. So we had early in the camp with day one was kind of like us hadn't done very much training up until that point. Instead of game the previous week. So a few small-sided games, that kind of thing. And next day was just a walkthrough. So we made point. No running at all, really just like walking and jogging, just getting through some shapes. And then we built up our next 2 training sessions. So we had a pretty heavy contact day the next day, into our opposed day on the on the Monday. The Tuesday, was a day off. The players had a bit of treatment and stuff like that during that day. Wednesday, captain's run, and then played Friday night. So tried to probably mimic what would be a normal week for the guys in terms of like heavy days and load-ups. And then there's more gym sessions in there as well, and all the gym stuff was basically myself going to the heads of performance or the elite pathways guys at each of the respective clubs and just say, hey, this is their plan. Can you make sure you guys got a program, whether it's on any of the apps or you use it Excel still or whatever it might be. We had access to a couple of decent gyms there, and then both as the strength and conditioning coach, just more of just supervising, and then if they have an exercise, the equipment's not there or they needed something different, we could put out SandC brains to use and find something that was similar to the same training effect.
No, it's awesome. I always feel like when it comes to state of origin, especially, the main squads for the men's and the women's, everyone's got their opinions and everything like that. But it's really cool to see, during that week, how to best prepare your players. And I feel like if you can really bring that playing group together, you're going to get the best performance out there because they've already, done the work, got the skills and the strength and all that. But if you can put in some good measures to really gel that team together. And also, I would say this is my one opinion from State of Origin this year for the men's is pick the best players in the best position. Don't be picking people out of positions as we've seen through the series. But if you can do that and then bring the team together, then you'll probably get a really good performance out on the field.
Again, that was something like we did really well at the start. Again, we didn't know we didn't get the result we wanted. The way we kind of brought the team together, and we had a few different bits and pieces outside of training that I suppose in that short space of time allowed us to be a little bit vulnerable at times amongst the group, which is, again, that's really hard for 18, 19-year-olds to find that vulnerability. It's easy for anyone, but for them, it's probably even more difficult, but they did an exceptional job at it. And I think it, like you said, it helped us gel a bit more as a team. So yeah, we didn't leave any stone unturned, and our effort areas, all those kinds of things, we really did well at during the game. It was just some execution stuff, but that's footy.
100%. So growing up as a young lad, what sports did you play, and do you still play any sports currently?
When I think started off playing a little bit of soccer, a little bit of tennis. Probably wasn't the right size to play either of those sports. I was a bit of a chunky kid growing up. Obviously, and living in Central Queensland, growing up in Central Queensland, Rugby League, beyond, and also probably from about the 8 and 10 until whenever I was playing Rugby League all through primary school and high school, and then through uni and stuff like that. Moved overseas and didn't really played a little bit of like intramural, like casual, social flag American football, which is pretty cool. Just for a bit of fun, but yeah, probably the only thing I really involved in is Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Obviously gym training and all that stuff aside, but Jiu-Jitsu is probably the sport I'm involved in. I wouldn't say I haven't competed for a few years, but might be on the horizon to get into some comps again, but definitely Jiu-Jitsu is probably outside of work and stuff like that is my hobby.
Nah, it's awesome. I feel like any type of wrestling or, mixed martial arts like that, you probably don't realize how actually tough it is until you do 10 seconds of wrestling or 20 seconds wrestling at a footy training one day. You're like, this is pretty intense. And then doing that as a sport itself, you probably just don't realize how taxing it is on the body and how strong and how much of a capacity you actually need to do it.
Yeah, it was a bit of an eye-opener. And I suppose a decently strong human being, and then you go against some more experience. It might have 15 or 20 kilos on him, and they're tying you up like a pretzel and taking you into the deep water. So it's probably more so than anything like the physical capacity and physicalness, physicality, over the side. I think just the mindfulness that you get out of it, and the ego death that you encounter every time you go on the mats is probably the most benefit on the out of it, that's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like for us as SNC coaches, if you aren't sort of doing any sports outside just for a bit of fun or a bit of social, definitely go back into it and you'll probably realize some stuff about yourself and how to better coach your athletes, and then also understand the way a team should be run as well. So like for me, going back and playing baseball again after a certain amount of time off, and then also doing golf as well, it's like, you're teaching a new skill to yourself and you're getting frustrated. You're like, why am I doing this to myself? And then you're questioning why you're doing it, and then you start to get it, and then you start to perform well at it as well. So I feel like it's a good way to humble yourself, learn a bit about yourself, and then apply that back to your athletes and the sport that you're working with.
Massively. And I think working in, whether it's in the rugby codes or Aussie rules, any collision or contact sport, like there's definitely some benefits I've got out of jiu-jitsu that I've been able to take from what I've learned in my sport on the mats and put it into some training modalities, whether it's on the field or in the gym with the teams I work with.
And one of those benefits is you can take down any rugby league athlete that you work with. Is that something that they got to keep in the back of their mind?
Not quite, unfortunately. There, I might have a few tricks up my sleeve, but giving up 20 or 25 kilos to some of those fellas once I'm on the bottom, if they know they're dealing with their body weight, I'm not. So I just try and keep them at arm's length.
Yeah, that's good. It's good advice to take. So when did you decide you wanted to become an S&C coach? Was this always an area of interest for you?
I think I was always like a decently okay-ish rugby league player. So I probably classify myself as a fringe state league player. Like I was in some state league squads there for a while. I probably didn't have the skill of it. It just got capacity to really kick on. And then so during uni, obviously, I was always kind of I was studying exercise science, and was always kind of looking for an edge, I guess, in my training. And what could I do better to maybe put myself in the frame to go a bit further with footy. So that kind of let me down that rabbit hole about extra gym work and what to do on the field and plyometrics and all that kind of stuff, and just kind of blossomed from there. So yeah, I'd always been interested in training, always liked the gym through high school and that. But once I had got to a point where I was like, hey, I need to try some different things or do a bit more training wise to maybe excel at my sport, I started to really get interested in strength and conditioning.
No, it's awesome. It's a good journey to have, and I feel like you can resonate with many other S&C coaches. You did some sport and then just wanted to learn a bit more, and then be like, oh wow, I can actually do this for a job. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of S&C coaches who are failed athletes like me. So
failed athletes or just haven't found the right sport to excel in yet. Yeah, I think
that's one way to put it. That's what I keep telling myself.
Yeah. I think my athletes are always surprised when I tell them that I play baseball, and it's only third grade. It's nothing special or anything like that. But I think they forget that you're once an athlete or could actually do something quite well, and it's always funny when you can show those skills off to them. Like, oh yeah, that's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. Like, I don't think like an athlete shouldn't expect you, and you shouldn't expect yourself to be an elite level, world class athlete. Well, that's not what we're there to do. I think they can appreciate and understand like you go through the training process and have to turn up on game day. And obviously, it's not at that like elite level, but I think they can just appreciate the fact that you'll get out and put yourself out of your comfort zone at times to do things. So like I know like a couple of jiu-jitsu comps have been like a couple of athletes I'd work with would come and watch, and they probably get a little bit more of a newfound respect and understanding for what you do and how hard it is. So, and again, it's that talking about vulnerability. Like I'm winning jiu-jitsu comps where I've been submitted in front of athletes and stuff like that, and there's always a little bit of banter about it, but again, that's all part of the job and part of the process. So I guess, again, they get that little bit more, even though there's being that kind of thing. I think they just respect that you put yourself in that position to be vulnerable like that.
Yeah, 100%. And then if you can be vulnerable and open and, share stuff about yourself with your athletes, it's just going to build a stronger connection. And then, you're just going to reap the rewards from that.
100%. 100%.
So you spend a bit of time in rugby league now. What attributes are required to be successful in rugby league that you think for athletes, and then also as strength and conditioning coaches as well?
Look, I think the biggest thing for athletes, they can never lose sight of the fact that their sport is their craft is the number one. I've seen plenty of rugby league players who weren't strong, and weren't overly fast, but because they're more skilled than everyone else, and they were able to compete at a high level. And then on the flip side, I've seen plenty of rugby league players who like awesome physical attributes, awesome 1.2, strong in the gym, but could barely crack the team. So I think for rugby league players or any both rugby codes, like skill pays the bills. Obviously there is a limiting factor to that as well. So I think players just have to always reverse engineer their position. So if you're a lead or an amateur athlete, you're looking to get better, you have to think about what is it that I have to do to be better in my position. So if you're a middle forward in rugby league, so you have to be able to have a bit of an engine. You have to have some kind of aerobic base to be able to punch out 20, 25, 30-minute stints in the middle. You have to be able to have some repeat speed ability or some repeat effort ability, I guess. It's not just about running. It's about getting in collisions and stuff like that. If you watch like the guys like Ruben Cotter or Pino Fasul Moali, their leg speed, they're aggressive into contact, either in attack and defense. Then for a player to go back, okay, so those are the things I need. What do I need to do to get better at those things? So if we're talking about leg speeds, like some axle decel type stuff, if we're talking about aggressive into contact, it's am I explosive in the gym? Do I have what are my weapons? Do I have good bumpers? Do I have a really strong tackle, a really strong carry? So it's always, again, relating everything they do back to their position. Obviously, we need to find some general physical prep stuff in there as well, but that's kind of going down another rabbit hole. And then I think as coaches, it's the same principles. Like it's not all about and all strength coaches at some point in their career early on get into the habit or the era, I guess, of just focusing on ticking boxes with numbers. Like, oh, look at this guy, he's put 15 kilos on his bench, or his 0.2 times is 40 seconds quicker, or so everyone gives a solid pat on the back for that. But at the end of the day, like that stuff's always going to be secondary to how well they perform on the field. So I think strength coaches always need to keep that in mind. And the exact same thing applies. Like we need to look at the sport. If you're working with sub-elite or amateur athletes and you don't have the time or the resources, you can be a bit more global about it. So look at the sport as a whole. What do we need to be able to do to get to where we need to get to as a team physically? So I'm strong enough and fit enough and fast enough, and we can go from there. And obviously, as you move up the levels, we start to talk about game models and things like that. So we're talking a bit before about working with the Queensland under-19 team, and we had a very simple, very effective game model that everyone knew their role within the game model. And all our game plan, both of attack and defense, revolved around that. But if you're working with a team full time over the course of the season, like your pre-season, you should be able to coach and go, what's your philosophy, or what is your tactical idea? Again, it's just all come back to what your game model is. And there's a strength and conditioning coach. How am I going to help you achieve that game model?
A lot of great advice from there. And the things that sort of pop in my head is, as you said, skills pay the bills. And it's just so cool to see the evolution of rugby league where we have front rowers now who can just slot in to be a back rower, and they're expected to do that and could be expected to play a full 80 minutes as well as a front rower. And I think that's really cool. The game has changed and evolved where, you look back in the day, they would run for 15, 20 minutes, get a 20-minute break, come back on and off, and that's completely gone. So you need to be able to evolve as an athlete and have that good motor capacity. And now as a front rower, you're expected to be able to, pass left to right pretty effectively. Can't just be a short pass, has to be a bit of a longer pass as well. And you need to be able to do everything. And then if you're a back rower, you need to be able to play center. If someone goes down and you don't have a utility back on the bench, you need to slot in to be a center. And can you be able to handle that stuff? So I think it's really cool that you mentioned the skills pay the bills. And then what are some things that in SandC that we can help you to continue to improve those skills and make sure that you're robust, resilient, and ready to perform each and every single week.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, I think we should if you're into this, with the while leaning forwards in today's game, like people like guys like Ken Murray, and like his running games, but also his defensive games, also his passing game is second to none. The amount of times like you see him, throw that long pass out the back, and 99 times out of 100 is going to hit his halfback or his 5'8" on right out in front. So yeah, like you said, the game just keeps evolving, and players just keep adding more strings to their bow.
And it also popped in my head just watching a bit of rugby union last week was South Africa coming over to New Zealand and being a bit cocky about, resting some players to go play the All Blacks and they're going to win. And, Springboks is huge. They are monsters of men, and they do have a lot of good skills, and they're very fast and really good at what they do. And they smacked the Wallabies the other week. But, New Zealand have that mixture of size, speed, and just robust athletes, and they carved them up over the weekend. So it just shows you that you can have the biggest team out there, but if you don't have that good balance of skills, speed, power, and all those attributes that was talked about, it doesn't really mean much. And especially if you go up against a world-class team like the All Blacks, who are just going to carve you up and have some smaller players, but can just handle anything you throw at them.
Yeah, no, exactly right. Like unfortunately, like a team like you said, like the Springboks, you look at some of the players on their team, and they're just absolute monsters. And they're probably nearly every game they play at the World Cup, they're going to win the Walk Monster Park competition. But at the end of the day, that only gets you so far. And like you said, you have a team like the All Blacks, they have the athletes, but they've also got the high level of skill in a sport like rugby or rugby union. Skills are always going to win out. The physicality is important, don't get me wrong. There's always going to be, no matter how many like Paddy Carrigans or Ruben Cotters or Cam Murrays that are in the game as small middle forwards, you're just always going to be room in the game for the big man. So, but yeah, like I said, like you still need that skill element, otherwise it's only going to get you so far.
Yeah, it's always disappointing when you see a big athlete who's got hands like feet, and you're like, oh, come on, you should have learned how to pass a little bit earlier and catch.
Yeah, there's still a few of them, but there's always going to be a spot for them somewhere if they would not.
Yeah, 100%. So we've pretty much touched upon a lot of these things, but can you think of anything else of how strength and conditioning training can help rugby athletes to reach their full potential?
Well, I think one you kind of touched on it a bit there, talking about robustness, and I think that's probably the main one for me, especially working in that rehab space at the Rabbitohs. There is, and again, I think strength and conditioning is evolving and sports evolving, but I think just having that ability to stay fit, I've got heaps of the little, like say that skills pays the bills, but the best ability is availability. Like if you're injured all the time, when you can't get on the paddock, and perform optimally, like you're not doing yourself or your team any favors. So I think that's I suppose, probably even more so than being strong and fit and all those kinds of things. I think that's the most important part of being an S&C coach, and all part of the nuance of coaching is understanding what we need to run fast to stay healthy. We need to be able to have a certain amount of strength to stay healthy. We need to be able to, again, in our collision sports, in rugby, in rugby league, we need to be able to absorb collisions and deliver collisions. We need to be able to be strong throughout. When we talk about core strength, it's not just to be a six pack, it's about having strong throughout posterior chain and core, and be able to put all those pieces into place when we're trying to let guys on the ground and dominate in collisions. We've got to be able to change direction well without putting ourselves in compromising positions that are going to affect groins and knees and stuff like that. So I think, outside of obviously the obvious ones, like being strong, being fast, we want to be able to stay on the field and stay healthy. And I think that's a major part of strength and conditioning.
Yeah, I think all that ties into being consistent with your training. You know, if you can do everything you've just said there, Jared, for the athlete and then obviously the coach as well, if you can be consistent throughout the week of how you're exposing your athletes week to week, consistent gym, field and all that, then you're going to build robust athletes. It's when, I've got a bit of Achilles pain or something. Okay, why is that? Oh, I went and did a 10K run. Well, no shit, you saw and something's come up. It's because all this massive spike's just come out of nowhere. But if you can be consistent with your training, and that's all we want, be consistent, and then we're going to see results. And it's much easier to change stuff and implement some new interventions if it's not going well. But if we can be consistent with our load and understand what needs to be ticked off during the week, then you're going to be robust and you're going to have a good career and be able to be ready out there on the field. Yeah,
exactly. Look, a little bit, a lot is better than a lot, a little bit. So if we're like I said, just being consistent, and we're finding a little bit of high speed earlier in the week. So we're armoring our hammies and that kind of thing. And just got this fire alarm go off again.
I can't hear it, so it's actually pretty good.
Oh, really? Well, that's good. I'll keep going.
Yeah.
That's really loud. No, like we said, be consistent and kind of, again, educating athletes of why we need to run fast early in the weeks so we can run fast later in the week. Because I've said in the past where you've got sort of in scanning games and you might be in training and playing small sided games or in opposed sessions, and if you were like a hammer or someone like that who's just lightning quick, you only need to run at 80 or 85% to smoke everyone in training. You don't have to find at 60 gear, but in a game when you've got a bit of space, you just automatically going to find the 60 gear. And if you haven't exposed yourself to that speed some stage in the past week or so, you really put yourself in a compromising position to have some kind of a soft tissue injury. And again, that's just all part of the education process with players too. A lot of players are just, I guess, they're soldiers and you tell them to do something, they'll go do it. But especially younger players now, they want to know why, which I think is good for us as coaches as well, because it makes us a bit more accountable and maybe put a little bit more thought into why we do things and how we do things. But if we can explain to players, hey, you need to touch a 90% or a 95% sometime today at training, and you say, this is why, then they're going to buy in and be like, yes, sweet, no worries, I'm agree with what you're saying, we're all in. So, like you said, we need to make sure we're consistent and it's got to help us stay on the field.
I always call those moments when I'm watching sport, when someone's going full hard and sprinting, I'll just go I hold my breath thank God you got through it and didn't hurt themselves. And I always see my athletes at training do it as well. And I know we've best prepared them, but I still have that moment of thank God.
Don't worry. I've definitely had a few of those in the past, watching some leadership athletes who have come back from some injury and they know to help. It's all losing hearts and your mouth there for 15 seconds. yeah, and you know you've done the work and that kind of thing. There's always that little bit of motivation there.
Yeah, 100%. So what should a typical week look like for athletes in the gym for rugby league during, say, the preseason and in season on like an ideal week for you? What would be some of those things that they got to tick off and be consistent with during the preseason? And then how would you adjust that to the in season?
Yeah. So obviously, in the preseason, that's when we're building our weapons and building our ability to be a good rugby player. So in preseason, we're probably trying to hit the gym at least 3, probably 4, some guys 5 times a week. What personally, I like to have like an upper body, lower body split. So we might do like an upper body day on Monday, a lower body day Tuesday, and then repeat that later in the week. And I think like the Charlie Francis kind of vertical integration stuff is the way to do that as well. So everything we do at training or on the field or on the mats, everything has to be related. So some guys will kind of split up our lower body days and our higher running days, which I really don't agree with because we're just only keen on both ends then. But say we have, for example, if Monday we might have like a higher, we're going to hit our speed early in the week on Monday. So we're going to have our lower body session in the afternoon. Then on Tuesday, it might be defense oriented day on the field. So it's going to be an upper body day in the gym. And then, again, just repeat that later in the week. And then you have some guys might need a bit of extra hypertrophy or something like that. So you might chuck on a Wednesday or a Saturday, you might chuck in a beach conditioning type session there to help that along. And then as we get in season, and again, in that pre-season, like everything's kind of builds up. So we're not going to go in day one and do some crazy plyometrics or go all out on a clean or something like that. We're going to have a periodized plan progression in our exercise. It's not just our sets and reps, but our actual exercise selection. So you might with talking about like in season as well, like account heavy stuff. So we're not going to go into like any like really aggressive single leg RDLs or anything like that. When pre-season leg session number 1, we're going to build up to that with some like barbell hammy stuff and not too much single leg stuff. And then as we get further and further into it, we'll progress there. In season, I think, say we have a typical 7-day turnaround on your main training day. So your opposed session, which is, say that's generally in GD -3. That's going to be our big power day. So we'll hit some heavier squats, or it might be, again, depending on what level you're working at and the athletes you're working with, maybe some band or chain work, some plyometric work depending on the athlete, some hammy robustness. So whether that's an eccentric, like a Nordic or a raised curl or something like that, or some isometric work or some hammy catches or something like that to really tick the robustness box. And then earlier in the week on our GD -5, that's going to be like typically our big strength day. So we still want to make sure our volume is going to be much lower than in the preseason, but we still want to make sure we have that strength base there. Obviously, again, because of just the toll from games and stuff like that, we're not going to be as strong as we were at the end of the 6-week block in preseason, but we just want to make sure we still have some strength qualities that we can rely on when we get into games.
Oh, no, it's awesome. It's an awesome insight, because I think athletes just continue, and coaches as well, just want to make the most of the preseason. Then when it comes in season, maybe take a backward step and sort of start to be a bit inconsistent with training. And then you'll see that over the season, which is quite long. And that's what we've got to remember. It's a long in season, that some strength drops off a bit quicker than what we wanted to, and we don't actually continue to improve performance. And then the little niggles come in, and then availability isn't the best. So Really just got to make sure that you're smart about your training, like you said, reduce the volume a bit, but you got your main lifting days, which you're going to be consistent with, and just making the most of your time there and allowing athletes to recover as well so they're ready to come game day.
Yeah, and there's obviously some like nuance to that as well. So if you have a short turnaround, like a 5-day turnaround, you're only going to have one gym session in there. If you've got a longer turnaround, you might be able to add a little bit more volume here and there on the field as well. So it's all about, like I said, being smart and planned with everything you do. But there's always a plan B. There's always something else you can do. So if you're a player who has like tendonitis or something like that, like how can we work around that? So they're still going to have some lower body, particular lower body strength props there without flaring their knee up. Because again, if we flare up things like that when it comes to our main training days and our game day, we're not putting them in the best position to doing that. So it's always something we have to keep in mind and keep into consideration.
Hi everyone, we just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby SandC blog today. You'll find our website link in our bio below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby SandC on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode.
And same question pretty much, but now for the field type of training, which is the other part of an S&C coach. It's not just the strength coach, it's also the conditioning part of it. What type of stuff do you like to do during the preseason and then also the in-season as well?
In the preseason, obviously, it's all about, especially if we talk about like an Elite preseason before Christmas, it's all about building our base as big as we can. So doing the really mundane kind of NAS grids and stuff like that for the first 2 or 3 weeks to build that base level of running. And then as we kind of progress, we start to add some more change directions, some more off the ground type stuff, some more high speed running, things like that. So always starting very general, very broad, and then very specific. So looking at positional differences, differences from player to player. Obviously, everyone has like some kind of a testing, whether it's a 1.2 or a yo-yo or 30-15, whatever you use. It doesn't really matter what test you use. Well, I think it's more about just using that test to gather information so we can make sure we're prescribing training correctly. You'll see coaches in the past, you'll say like, oh, we're doing an AS today, and they'll say, 70 meters or 7, that's got MAS, that's just a 70 meter, that's in 15 seconds. Like my 70 meters, it might be working at 115% MAS, and for someone else's, it might be then working at 80. So I think we always have to keep in mind, again, why we're doing things, not just doing them for the sake of doing them. And then as we move into, and again, in that preseason, we build that base, and then we start to get some conditioning effect from our scrimmages and opponents' sessions and stuff like that. And then as we move in season, it's just more about load management around game day. You might have some edge forwards or you might have like you look at a utility bench player and might only get 10 or 15 minutes. And often that utility bench player is one of the fitter blokes on the field, because they're usually someone who's going to be able to cover positions like fullback in the halves and the outside back, so they can probably play back row pinch as well. So making sure those guys are still getting enough meters in their legs, whether you do that straight after the game, it's a tough carry, but if you can get guys to get a little dose after the game, if they haven't got the meters in their legs, or just getting them to find a little bit of an extra effort on GD6 or GD -6 or GD -5, just depending on making to the rounds, that kind of thing. So in season, just like with the strength stuff, you just have to make sure everything you do is planned and calculated. and think about like your longer turnarounds and stuff like that. So on a longer turnaround, if we've had some consistent 6-7 day turnarounds, then we might have a 9-day turnaround. Sure, like you might have a little blowout early in that week, but it's not something you would do if you had a 5-day turnaround. If you were going from a Saturday to a Thursday or something like that, like there's no way even consider anyone in your 17 or in your 22 doing any extra there. So I think, like you said, with the running stuff, and then again, speed's another beast all in itself. When we're talking about aerobic, or we're talking about conditioning type running, we're always starting very broad and very general to build that base, and then we get more specific. So if we look at what an outside back or an edge back rower, they're going to be covering a lot more high speed meters than a middle forward, but with kick chase and stuff like that. But our middle forward is like, can they change direction? Can they accel, decel, get off the ground? All those kind of things that are really important for their position. And yeah, like we talked about earlier, just reverse engineering the position and working from there with our running and stuff like that.
No, it's awesome, and definitely some good advice there. And just, like you said in the preseason, just build that base and then earn the right to add in these little different variations and challenge the athletes as well. You don't have to keep it so basic, but you don't want to then, like you said, start off and you blow out the first 2 weeks and you're trying to build character or something like that. That's not really the way to go. I have heard that from someone else who's done that, but earn the right to build that and then change and add the variations in as you go.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. Like you have to earn the right to run fast. You have to earn the right to, if you're in an extras group, you have to earn the right to get out of that group, whether it's because of skin folds or body weight or your fitness. The reason being, like, as strength and conditioning coaches, like we need to be able to, I suppose, the players from themselves at times. Like you wouldn't want a player who just off the back of a season, you wouldn't, like I wouldn't anyway. I wouldn't have players doing like 20-meter sprints on day one, week 1 or 2 of preseason, because you don't know what they've done for the past 6 weeks. And you want to make sure that they've got some running resilience and resilience built up before you expose them to that.
100%. So what do you think is often neglected or forgotten in a rugby league athlete's SandC program?
I've been pretty lucky that the clubs I've worked with, we've got pretty good staff in terms of finding any cracks or finding any holes that we might have in our program and making sure we fill those gaps. I think it's again, things that we talked about as far as like your resilience, so like things like calf strength and groin strength and stuff like that get overlooked. Maybe again not at the elite level, like both at the Cowboys and at the Rabbitohs. Like everyone's pretty good with their calf resilience stuff and their Copenhagen's and stuff like that. But I think younger athletes, I think it's really important. And the beauty of those kind of things too is it's very easy to take care of. What all you need is a step, and you can do, if you can do 20 single leg calf raises on each leg twice, 2 sets of 20 twice a week, you're really helping yourself out there. And there might be some long lever and short lever Copenhagen's and stuff like that to help with that groin resilience. Especially if you're sitting outside the back or a spine player, where you're going to be kicking and cutting and changing direction a lot. But I think outside of that, like I think there's no secret sauce in strength and conditioning. Again, for most sports, I think in rugby league, in rugby union, if you can just do the basic ones really well, you go a long way to helping your athletes out. So you don't have to have some kind of intricate, crazy, like eliminating resistance or crazy rep schemes or cluster schemes like that. If you can just make sure your players are ticking all the boxes as far as limit patterns go, and then, like I said, filling those little gaps with our core strength, like heavy groin, calf robustness, we're really up and going. I think that's probably one thing I've probably paid a bit more attention to late over the last couple of years. I wouldn't say I've changed my ideas around, but I would say probably put a bit more emphasis on those things and probably a bit more emphasis on like our rotational and heavy rotational work throughout our trunk. Because you look at, again, when there's league or union, there's so much working that in contact, whether it's in a ruck or a wall or in a 3-man temple or whatever it might be in league, having that core strength to help get into awkward positions and be strong in awkward positions is really important.
And a groin and a calf injury is just a really shitty injury to have, because they both take a while to rehab, and it just sucks. So if you can do those little 1%ers, like you said, at home, you just need a step or a bench or something along those lines. You can get your brother or sister to hold your leg for a Copenhagen. Doesn't matter what it is. Or you can just do skipping. You don't even need a skipping rope to skip. You can just jump up and down on the spot, pretend you're skipping, get some good, calf stiffness, and really make that area robust. And then you're ticking up a box, and you're most likely not going to get an injury in that area. And or if you do get caught in an awkward position, like you said, you're robust enough and resilient enough to withstand that and then be able to continue playing on. Whereas if you didn't do it, something bad might happen, unfortunately.
And I think there's some really good, when we talk about like half resilience and stuff like that, I think there's some really good resources out there. Like Altus and some really good like drill progressions, or sorry, they're like pogo progressions and stuff like that. Like there's a million things out there. So if people are interested in that kind of stuff, or want to know more about it, there's plenty of stuff out there to help. Suppose like for athletes to just but also for coaches to get some ideas as well.
Now that probably leads well into my next question: is what are some other sports that rugby athletes should look to and gain some knowledge from, and then apply it to their own sport that comes to mind for you?
I think, again, probably a bit biased here, but I think there's definitely some credence to a bit of grappling, whether it's jiu-jitsu or like freestyle wrestling. I think there's a lot of, again, there's some really good resources out there on the internet that are starting to put a bit more time and effort into that sort of things. Like not just going, again, same thing as like we were talking about before, not just going in day one and going into shark bait drills or something like that. We're having some planned contact progressions in the gym on the mats, but before we even get into contact, what are we doing to make sure our shoulders are robust, our core is robust, all those kinds of things. So yeah, definitely there's some credence to that. And also like technique and stuff aside, like it's a completely different fitness when you in a grapple. If you're in a 6-minute round, 6-minute rounds of jiu-jitsu on the mats,
it's a long time.
Struggling to breathe. Yes, they're struggling to breathe, and you've got someone in a scarf holder inside control, and you try to create space and that kind of thing. There's a lot of isometrics and stuff like that in there that I think guys can get a bit out of, and especially if you wrestle or grapple with some really experienced guys. Because obviously, if you go in, if you're a rugby athlete and you're like, oh, I will get my wrestle better, and you go in and you are wrestling some white belt or blue belt who's sees the pink mist and they just try and rip your arms off, or that's not going to help you be a better rugby player when you've got a torn rotator cuff. But if you go against some really high level guys and you say, like, hey, look, I'm not doing this to grapple, I'm doing this for these reasons. So but those really experienced guys, like they understand like what they can and can't do to organise your body, but also like make life hard for you when you're on the mat. So whether it's like holding you in a certain position, not letting you escape, not letting you get underhooks, whatever the case may be. And then I think the other thing I think, and we're starting to see like a lot more, strength conditioning always goes through different, I wouldn't say fads, but different cycles of what's popular. And I think at the moment, like there's so much stuff out there on like sprinting and game speed and all that kind of stuff. So I think you look at track athletes, obviously they're not going to be track athletes, but I think there is some credence to the stuff that track athletes do. And I think especially in terms of, I talked about Charlie Francis before, like our training days should either be high days or low days. If we're in the middle, we're just treading when we're not getting better. I don't want to say. I think there's a bit of credence to looking at some of the stuff that the track and field coaches do. And again, I think you talk about like periodization and planning and progression. Like some of the best coaches I've seen talk or taken information from the track and field guys.
No, it's awesome. 3 sort of areas that you can look towards. And for me, with that question as well popping up in my head, those sports are awesome and examples. For me, it's looking at towards, say, some of the American sports. I think for rugby union, rugby league athletes, how to manipulate your body to be able to sidestep more efficiently, and then also, juke out or fake out the opposition as well. And currently working with Aussie Rules, part of the key forwards is, separating yourself or giving a nice little push off to mark that ball. If you can look at how some of, the wide receivers versus the defensive backs, or then even some of the NBA athletes, how they get around screens and fight through screens, if you can look how they do that and then apply it to your sport, that's a game changer for me, I think.
Yeah. Massively, when you talk about, like, again, wide receivers and in that one-on-one versus a defensive back, or like a big in the NBA where they're under the rim, they've got to go and get the ball. Like, it's all about, again, having that coach's eye and not seeing like, oh, well, the things they're doing there, like, I can look twice and watch sport over here. So, that's something I hadn't really thought of, but again, it's something I haven't spent much time in my but it's one of those things where you look at those other sports and you start to borrow ideas, because we're standing on the shoulders of giants, I guess. Like, the only way to get better is to maybe get outside the box sometimes and have that creativity about you. You can look to other sports and get better that way.
Yeah, 100%. So when you get some spare time during the week, what do you like to get up to? What's some interesting hobbies or habits that you got going on?
Obviously, like I said, getting on the mats, jiu-jitsu is good. It's good for the mind, probably more than anything. So you've got the hour and a half, all you can think about is what you're doing at that point in time where you're going to get poked or tapped or whatever. Like to read a bit too. Probably the past 12 months or so, 18 months, I made a point of trying to read a lot more. And like several journal articles and things like that, just fiction or other books to get away from it a little bit. Maybe like cooking. Went through like the sourdough phase in lockdown for a bit there. That made a few lines to me last too long, but how to get a bit adventurous with cooking. Like at the moment, it's a little bit of time, like spending like a bit of an afternoon getting dinner prepped for my partner when she comes home from work. So try and make myself useful.
It's awesome. Yeah, definitely the sourdough. There was a lot of guys just making sourdough bread, and hearing the process to make it, I was like, oh, that's quite weird to get the end product. But hey, it is what it is.
It was pretty, it's very involved. Like, it's not just whacking some yeast and flour and water into the food processor. So I think like when you take it all into account, I know the juice is worth the squeeze. Like, it was always nice to have a finished product at the end there. But I understand why when you go to like a nice bakery, like a sourdough is 3 or 4 times as expensive as like Wonder White or whatever off the shelf at the supermarket.
100%. So next part is something new that I've done on the podcast. You're the first one, Jared, to do this. It's just random questions that I thought I can't really tie them in perfectly to how I wanted it. So I'm just putting it to one category, and the goal is to try and answer them as short and as quick as possible, if you can. Some topics just you can't. But I feel sometimes as S&C coaches, we do go down the rabbit hole and just explain something a bit over the top when we should have probably kept it a bit simple. So the challenge is for you today is to try and keep these short and sweet and seeing what sort of golden nuggets we can get out of these questions.
That's going to be a real challenge for me. I have a tendency to waffle on at times, but I'll do my best.
Yeah, that's all right. So how do athletes make the most of the rehab training and bounce back from injury?
Just trust the process and what we've talked about all day today, be consistent.
100%. What main data points should coaches look to help improve athletic performance using GPS technology?
Always related back to the game and the position. If we're looking at specific metrics for league and probably union, total volume, high speed running, percentage of max V, and then like our Excel DCL metrics. We can tick those 4 boxes and keep them. Again, we look at what we do in a game and we can make sure we're following that volume or that speed. We're helping the athletes out there for sure.
Especially, and because there is so many data points out there, you don't want to waste too much time, especially if it's just you and you not having any external help and you got a whole bunch of squads and there's all these different things going. If you got those key areas that you want to look at, just look at those, and that's going to be the best for you and for the team as well.
Yeah, you're better off just keeping it to the bare minimum and focusing all your training on that. In my opinion.
What is a common misconception you hear in SandC in the strength conditioning field that is just wrong, that you hear all the time?
Again, I think the tide's shifting a bit, but I think, and it's probably not so much in our country. It's definitely, and again, I think the tide's shifting over there as well in the States. But when people there's too much focus on strength. Strength is never a weakness, which I don't necessarily agree with. I've seen guys who play test match football who couldn't bench under kilos. So being strong is good, but it's not the be all and end all.
So what has been a big game-changing moment in your coaching career that stands out?
That is a tough one. I think my move to Sydney when I left the Cows and went to the Rabbitohs, that was probably an exciting time for me, like going from that elite pathway where I dabbled in the NRL stuff, but wasn't my main focus to being all in with the NRL stuff. That was probably the game changer. Probably just reinforced that I was good at what I could do. Like that, everyone has a bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, but it probably, probably just solidified what I put down. No matter what thoughts you might have in your head, deep down, you know what you're doing, and you should have confidence in what you can do.
100%. And if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, metaphorically speaking, obviously, and getting a message out to millions or billions, what would you say, and why would you have that message up there?
I've thought about this one. I think Jackie Moon said it best when he said, "Everybody love everybody." I think if people put aside like religion, race, sexuality, what music you listen to, what car you drive, like put all that stuff aside and just treat everyone nicely and be a good person, we'd all be better off.
You could have went many ways with quoting Jackie Moon just then, and I've seen a couple of TikToks where it's like, it's got a serious, background to it. It's like, I always remember this quote that Will Ferrell said, and it jumps to the scene where he's screaming at the ref, saying some words I won't say right now. So that popped up in my head, and I was like, shit, is he going to say that? But yeah, I already love it. Yeah, that's funny, yes. And last one, what's the top 3 books that everyone should read?
Well, I had one book that I was going to put on this list, but I wouldn't put on the list, but I'm going to say it anyway. Meridian by Cormac McCarthy. It's probably a bit macabre for most people. So that might be a stand book, but number one, probably the best book. I would say the best book I've ever read was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kelly. He was a neurosurgeon, genius of a man, and he ended up dying of cancer. So it was a very interesting book, and it's basically split into two parts. So the first part of the book is talking about him being a surgeon and all the things that come along with that, being a brain surgeon, like in the echelon of echelons as far as like smart people go. And then the second half of the book was more about his diagnosis and how he dealt with that. And I think the main message there was you can't worry too much about the things in life that get you down. Like at the end of the day, I'm not pretty lucky to the hero gets. Everyone goes through their shit, but at the end of the day, like it's all been people you love. Not ashamed to say that the last chapter, which was the epilogue written by my wife, not very like a baby, but I think that's a book everyone should read. Number 2, Endure by Alex Hutchinson. Another really good book. In that strength coaches, athletes, everyone I think should read it. It's quite interesting. Talks about how far, like as human beings, like how far can we really push ourselves physically to the limit. So I mean, he talks about like Kipchoge with the marathon record, some stuff with like Everest climbers and things like that. Gets into a little bit of physiology, but not too much. And number 3, I think, well, it's a tough one. I get probably one book I read recently is it's a book called 28 by Brandon Jack, who Brandon Jack, it's 28 because he played 28 games for the Sydney Swans. He's Kieran Jack's younger brother. And it's just a really interesting read, especially after working. When you work in a league sport, you have a different perspective on not just the sport, but on the athletes themselves. So you see most sports autobiographies, it's about the guy who played 300 games and he was a champion. And he won all the trophies and played for a Wallaby or a Kangaroo or All Australian or a Socceroo or whatever. And the stories that they definitely have their ups and downs, but it's always like he's a champion. Whereas this book's probably a bit more of a realistic look at what life is like as a professional athlete. Again, there's a bit of CBA stuff going on at the moment in rugby league, obviously, and people complain about how much players get paid and this, that, and the other. But I'll back the players 110% with whatever they ask for. They're not asking for more mayonnaise. They won't be looked after medically. They wouldn't be looked after beyond their playing. You might see like the Cameron Smiths of the world, but for every Cameron Smith that plays 400 games, there's a bunch of blokes who play 20 or 30 or 40 games and have no meniscus or no ACL, or their shoulders are cooked or their neck is cooked. And they didn't, they're not going to be on TV and earn the money after the game. So yeah, 28 by Brandon Jack is another really good read. It's probably a truer reflection, I think, of what life is like as a professional athlete.
I'll definitely make note of that and put that to my list of many books that I got to read as well. Audiobooks is the way to go for sometimes. It's a good little cheat code that you can easily get through some books.
Agreed.
All right, last part, we'll smash this out because we have been talking for quite a while now. So Triple H, can you think of a hardship in your coaching career that sort of stands out, and how did you get through this hardship and what did you learn along the way?
Probably the during the COVID period, getting put down. Everyone working professional sport in this country, I think, in some degree or another, got stood down. I was working in the elite pathways at the time at the Cowboys. So when the club started back up, I didn't go back to work. I was actually lucky enough, though, that one of the sponsors of the club was able to hook me and a few other guys up with construction labouring jobs, which obviously it's not as glamorous as working in professional sport, but financially pretty good. And I think, obviously now I did that for 6 or 7 months. Then went back to work at the end of 2020? 2020? Yeah, 2020. And I think just it gave me the perspective And that, no matter like a shit bad coaching, isn't that bad. I was out in the middle of nowhere in Queensland, working in red dirt, banging star pictures into the ground. So it can always be a lot worse.
100%. Who was your hero, and why is this person your hero, or if you have a couple of heroes?
Oh, this is a tough one. Hero, probably personally, like I wouldn't. Hero's probably not allowed. I think my younger brother, I've always had a lot of respect for him. He was lucky enough to play. He played 21 NRL games for the Cowboys. He had his fair share of injuries. I think three ACLs along the way. But through all that, like he never wavered. He never expected anyone to feel sorry for him. He just cracked on with it. And he's done pretty well beyond football. Then probably like if you're talking about like outside of like personal stuff, maybe someone like geez, I really struggle with these kind of things. Yeah, but I got nothing for you.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think there's like, I wouldn't say heroes, but there's always a few people like coaching wise you kind of always look up to, like Dan Cass. I'll just think he's again not a hero because I think he would be the first to say, look, if someone do him as a hero, he'd tell them what he really thought of him. Because we're just coaching and stuff like that. But I just think the way he approaches life and his approach to coaching and athletes is really good as well. So yeah, I'm really shocked with that one. But yeah, those two guys right there.
Awesome. And the last one, what is a highlight that stands out in your coaching career so far?
I've had probably, again, because I've worked in that elite pathway space, anytime guys I've worked really closely with make their debut, that was always really special. Especially probably the last couple of years, I've been lucky enough to see a handful of guys I've worked with that have made their origin and test debuts, and guys like probably the two guys that there's a heap of them, but probably again the two guys who went through a couple of injuries, stuff like Tommy Gilbert, like he's had a couple of shoulder issues and that, and then really kind of seeing him like the way he played during the Origin series. He went through two back-to-back ACLs in the space of 12 months, and not once did he kind of complain or again didn't ask for any sympathy. Just every day turned up and did what was asked. But yeah, you can see like those guys, Murray Taulagi, Hammer, Jeremiah Nanai, like just those guys. I've known a few of them since I was 15 or 16, and again, like I'm never ever going to claim that I was like any coach that says like they were the reason they got to that level needs to have a good hard look at themselves in the mirror. But it's just nice to know that you had a little bit to do with them, and hopefully gave them a little sprinkle of your magic dust to help them along the way. And then yeah, it's just nice to see those guys achieve their goals, and yeah, I think that's it. That's the whole beauty of working in sport, is you get to work with guys and hopefully see them achieve what they've kind of put their life on hold to do.
100%. It's a great feeling. So last couple of questions. Who should jump on my podcast next to, jump on for a chat? Is there any coaches or athletes that come to mind?
Yeah, I think Tom Gilbert would be a good biter to have on. You see him on the field and he's a little bit tapped. He sees the pink mist a lot, Tom, but off the field he's a gentleman. He's very well spoken. Has a lot of interesting things to say. Look, he's one of those players. He's a completely different person once he crosses the white line. But once he's off the field, he's one of the best going. Then coaching wise, I think Andrew Kroll would be a good guy to get on. X's and O's wise, Crowley's up there with some of the best I've worked with. But I think the thing that makes him who he is his rapport with the players and his ability to get guys upward and rare to go for training sessions and stuff like that. And I think that's, like you talk a lot about the X's and O's of coaching, but beyond that, it's about creating relationships, things like that. And he's really good at that sort of it.
It's awesome. So where can listeners find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect?
Probably the best places to get at me, and we want to talk a bit of shop, is either on Twitter or on LinkedIn. If you just search my name on either of those and find me. And like, pretty open book, so I'm always keen to talk to young coaches and older coaches and whoever who wants to, again, talk a bit of shop and be able to ideas off each other.
Sweet. I'll put that in the link down below on the show. And yeah, that's all the questions I have today, Jared. Thanks for sharing your insight. It's been great. I've learned a lot, and I know other people will learn a lot as well. And thanks again for joining me today. It's been awesome.
No worries, Kieran. Appreciate it, mate. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby SandC podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby SandC on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to Come a Beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby SandC today and take your game to the next level.